In the vast darkness of space, where civilizations rise and fall like waves against cosmic shores, there exists a truth that echoes through every star system. Heroes are not born from perfection, but forged in the crucible of impossible choices. When the Zephyrian Empire's most decorated warrior finds herself broken and defeated on a forgotten battlefield, she never expected salvation to come from the most unlikely source, a species the galaxy had dismissed as primitive and weak. But sometimes the greatest strength lies not in advanced technology or superior firepower, but in something far more powerful, the unbreakable human spirit that refuses to abandon hope, even when facing certain death. This is the story of how one act of unexpected kindness between strangers would ignite a love that defied every law of war, politics, and evolution itself, proving that in a universe filled with darkness, the brightest light often comes from the most unexpected places. The metallic taste of blood filled Commander Zara's mouth as she pressed her back against the jagged rock formation, her violet-hued skin slick with sweat and alien dirt. Her breathing came in ragged gasps, each inhale sending sharp pains through her cracked ribs. The twin sons of Kepler, 442b, beat down mercilessly on the barren landscape, their orange light casting long shadows across the battlefield where the bodies of both Zephyrian and Kralek soldiers lay scattered like broken dolls. 3 days. 3 days since the ambush that had decimated her entire battalion. 3 days since she had watched her childhood friend Lieutenant Vex take a plasma bolt meant for her, his final words still echoing in her mind. Live, Zara. Live, and remember us. The mission had been simple. Establish a forward base on this remote planet to monitor Kralek's movements in the Outer Rim territories. What they hadn't expected was the trap waiting for them, a carefully orchestrated assault that suggested someone had leaked their position. Zara's emerald eyes scanned the horizon through the cracked visor of her combat helmet. Her standard-issue energy rifle lay broken beside her, its power cell drained hours ago during her last desperate firefight. The emergency beacon she had activated yesterday remained silent. No rescue was coming. The Zephyrian High Command probably assumed her entire unit was dead, and they weren't far from wrong. She was the sole survivor of 150 of the Empire's finest warriors. Her communication device crackled with static before falling silent again. She had been trying to reach any friendly forces for the past day, but the electromagnetic storms that frequently swept across this planet's atmosphere made long-range communication nearly impossible. Even her armor's power cells were running dangerously low, the heads-up display flickering intermittently as various systems began to fail. The sound of footsteps on gravel made her grip the combat knife at her belt. Slow, deliberate steps approached her position from the eastern ridge. Zara forced herself to remain still, controlling her breathing despite the pain. If this was a Kralek's patrol, she would take as many of them with her as possible before they finished her. The Zephyrian military code was clear: death before dishonor, and she would not give her enemies the satisfaction of taking her alive. But the figure that emerged from behind the rock outcropping was unlike anything she had ever seen. The being stood roughly 2 meters tall, bipedal but clearly not Zephyrian or Kralek's. Its skin was a pale pink color, almost ethereal under the dual sunlight, and it wore simple cloth garments instead of military armor. Most striking were its eyes, small compared to her own species, but holding a depth of intelligence, and something else she couldn't quite identify. Compassion, perhaps. The creature carried a primitive projectile weapon, but it was slung across its back, unthreatening. Zara's hand remained on her knife, but she found herself hesitating. This being showed no signs of aggression. Instead, it raised both hands in what appeared to be a universal gesture of peace. When it spoke, its voice was surprisingly melodic, though she couldn't understand the words. The creature tried several different languages before switching to Broken Galactic Standard. Hurt. You are hurt, the being said, its pronunciation careful but imperfect. Help. I help. Every instinct Zara had developed during her 15 years of military service screamed at her to be suspicious. Enemies often used wounded soldiers as bait for rescue operations. But something about this creature's demeanor suggested it posed no threat. More importantly, she was dying. Her medical scanner indicated internal bleeding, and, without proper treatment, she had perhaps hours left. "Who are you?" she managed to ask in Galactic Standard, her voice hoarse from dehydration. The creature smiled, and the expression transformed its face completely. "Name is Marcus. Human. Earth." It pointed to the sky. "You?" "Zephyrian, yes. Saw your ship crash. Came to help." "Human." Zara had heard of them, a relatively primitive species from a small world in the outer colonies. The galactic community barely acknowledged their existence, considering them too technologically backward to matter in interstellar affairs. Yet here one was, offering aid to a complete stranger on a hostile world where it had no business being. Marcus stepped closer, moving with careful deliberation to avoid startling her. Up close, Zara could see that he wore some kind of environmental suit under his simple clothes, though it was far less sophisticated than her own armor. His weapon appeared to be a chemical propulsion rifle, practically ancient by galactic standards. What was a human doing on a planet that was barely habitable, even with advanced life support systems? "Why help me?" Zara asked, studying his face for signs of deception. Marcus paused, seeming to consider his words carefully. "Because you need help. Because it's the right thing to do." He gestured to the battlefield around them. "Much death here. Too much death. Maybe one life saved is good." The simplicity of his answer struck Zara more profoundly than any complex political or military justification might have. In her world, everything was calculated: alliances, resources, strategic advantages. The idea of helping someone simply because it was the right thing to do was almost alien to her, despite her being the alien in this situation. Marcus knelt beside her, his movements slow and non-threatening. He produced a small device from his pack, primitive by her standards, but clearly some kind of medical scanner. "May I?" he asked, gesturing toward her injuries. Zara found herself nodding. The human ran the scanner over her torso, his brow furrowing as he interpreted the readings. "Bad," he said finally. "Internal bleeding. Needs surgery." But he looked around at the desolate landscape. "My shelter not far. Have medical supplies there. Can try to help. Why should I trust you?" The question came out harsher than Zara had intended, but survival instincts died hard. Marcus met her eyes directly. "Because you have no other choice. And because I give you my word." He placed his hand over his heart. "Human word is sacred thing. We do not break promises to those who need our help." Something in his tone, in the steady sincerity of his gaze, convinced her. Perhaps it was the proximity of death making her less cautious, or perhaps she recognized something in this strange creature that resonated with her own sense of honor. Either way, she made her decision. "All right, human Marcus, help me." Marcus smiled again, and Zara found the expression oddly warming. He helped her to her feet, supporting most of her weight as they began to move slowly across the rocky terrain. Her armor made her considerably heavier than he had expected. She could tell from his slightly labored breathing, but he never complained or asked her to remove any of it. "Your shelter," Zara said as they walked, needing the distraction of conversation to ignore the pain. "You live here?" "Not live. Research," Marcus replied, his attention divided between watching their path and supporting her. "Study planet geology. Mining survey for my people. Been here 2 months. Alone." The idea seemed impossible to her. Zephyrians never operated in units smaller than a dozen, and, even then, only for short-term missions. "Alone, yes. Humans, we adapt well to solitude. Part of our nature, maybe." They walked in relative silence after that, with Marcus occasionally murmuring words of encouragement when Zara stumbled or struggled to continue. The pain was increasing as her body's natural adrenaline began to fade, but she forced herself to keep moving. Whatever Marcus's shelter was like, it had to be better than dying slowly on the battlefield. After nearly an hour of difficult travel, Marcus's shelter came into view. It was a surprisingly sophisticated structure, built partially into a natural cave formation, but extended with modular components that suggested human engineering. Solar collectors and communication arrays dotted the exterior, while what appeared to be a small atmospheric processor hummed quietly near the entrance. Impressive, Zara admitted as Marcus helped her inside. The interior was clean and well-organized, with multiple workstations, sample storage areas, and what appeared to be a comprehensive medical bay. Human engineering, Marcus said with obvious pride. We may not have the most advanced technology, but we make what we have work well. He guided her to the medical area and helped her onto an examination table. The scanner readings he had taken earlier were displayed on a monitor, and Zara could see, even with her fading vision, that her situation was critical. Marcus was already preparing instruments and medications, his movements quick and efficient. "You're a surgeon?" she asked. "Field medic training. All human deep space researchers learn it. Too far from help to not know how to fix injuries." He paused in his preparations. "This will hurt. I have pain medication, but not strong enough for what needs to be done." Zara laughed, though it came out as more of a cough. "Human, I have survived 15 years of warfare. Do what you must." Marcus nodded and began working. True to his warning, the procedure was agonizing, but Zara gritted her teeth and endured it. Throughout the operation, Marcus maintained a steady stream of gentle conversation, telling her about his research, his home on Earth, his family. His voice became an anchor for her consciousness as the pain threatened to overwhelm her. Hours later, as Marcus finally finished sealing the last of her wounds with a combination of human and improvised medical techniques, Zara found herself studying her rescuer with new eyes. This was no primitive being. The precision of his work, the depth of his knowledge, the calm competence he had displayed, these were the qualities of a highly trained professional. "Why did you really help me?" she asked as Marcus monitored her vital signs. He was quiet for a long moment. "My planet, Earth, we know what it is like to be alone in the galaxy. To be overlooked, dismissed as unimportant. When I saw you there, dying alone," he shrugged. "Perhaps I saw a kindred spirit. Someone who needed help that only I could give." Zara felt something shift inside her chest, something that had nothing to do with her injuries. This human had risked his own safety to save a complete stranger from species he had probably never even met before. He had asked for nothing in return, expected no reward or recognition. It was an act of pure altruism that challenged everything she thought she knew about the galaxy and the beings who inhabited it. "What is your world like?" she found herself asking. Marcus's face lit up as he began to describe Earth, its blue oceans and white clouds, its diverse ecosystems and rich history. He spoke of humans who reached for the stars despite having limited technology, who explored dangerous worlds like this one driven by curiosity and the desire to expand their understanding. He painted a picture of a species that was young by galactic standards, but possessed something that many older civilizations had lost: hope and the willingness to help others simply because they could. As the local day cycle ended and the twin suns set behind the mountains, casting the shelter in warm artificial light, Zara found herself thinking that perhaps being stranded on this world wasn't the worst fate that could have befallen her. For the first time in days, she felt safe. More than that, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years, a genuine connection with another being that transcended species, politics, and the endless conflicts that dominated galactic civilization. Marcus checked her bandages one final time before settling into a chair beside her bed. "Rest now. Tomorrow we will try to contact your people. And if we cannot reach them," Marcus smiled that warm, transformative smile, "then we will figure out another solution. Humans are very good at solving impossible problems." As Zara drifted off to sleep for the first time in days, she found herself believing him. This strange, wonderful human had already worked one miracle by saving her life. Perhaps he could work another by helping her find her way home. Or perhaps, she thought as consciousness faded, home was no longer as important as she had once believed. Zara awoke to the sound of gentle humming and the rich aroma of something cooking. For a moment, disorientation clouded her thoughts as her mind struggled to reconcile the peaceful atmosphere with her memories of battle and death. Then, the events of the previous day came rushing back, and she turned her head to see Marcus working at a small cooking station across the shelter. The human noticed her movement immediately and approached with a warm smile. "Good morning. How do you feel?" Zara took inventory of her body, surprised to find that while she still ached, the sharp, stabbing pain had subsided significantly. Her breathing was easier, and the dizziness that had plagued her yesterday was gone. "Better. Much better. Your medical skills are impressive." Marcus's cheeks flushed slightly, an interesting physiological response that Zara made note of. "Just doing what needed to be done. Are you hungry? I made breakfast." The idea of food hadn't occurred to Zara until he mentioned it, but now she realized she was ravenous. She hadn't eaten anything substantial in over 2 days. With Marcus's help, she managed to sit up on the examination table, though her armor made the process awkward. "We should remove some of that," Marcus suggested, gesturing to her battle gear. "It will be more comfortable, and I need to monitor your wounds properly." Zara hesitated. Zephyrian military doctrine emphasized that armor should never be removed in potentially hostile environments. But looking around the shelter, at Marcus's concerned expression and the breakfast he had prepared for her, she found it difficult to maintain that level of paranoia. "Very well, but only the outer plates." With Marcus's assistance, she removed the heavy ceramic and metal plates that formed the external layer of her armor, leaving her in the lighter undersuit that provided environmental protection and basic life support. The relief was immediate. She hadn't realized how much additional strain the weight had been placing on her injured body. Marcus prepared a plate of what appeared to be some kind of grain porridge mixed with local edible plants. It wasn't anything like Zephyrian military rations, but it smelled appealing, and her body clearly needed the nutrition. "What is this?" she asked, accepting the bowl. In Zephyrian society, family bonds were important, but often secondary to military obligations. The idea of parents directly inspiring their children's careers, of maintaining close emotional connections across interstellar distances, suggested a very different cultural approach to relationships. "And you? Do you have family waiting for your return?" Zara's expression darkened slightly. "My parents died when I was young, a mining accident on one of the outer colonies. I was raised by the military academy. My brothers and sisters are my fellow soldiers." She paused, remembering the faces of those who had died 3 days ago. Or were. Marcus reached across and gently touched her hand. The gesture was so natural, so instinctively compassionate, that Zara found herself staring at the point of contact. Human skin was softer than Zephyrian skin and warmer. The simple touch conveyed more comfort than any words could have. "I'm sorry for your loss," Marcus said quietly. "Losing people you care about, it's one of the hardest things anyone can endure. In the military, we are taught that loss is inevitable, that we must not allow grief to compromise our effectiveness." Even as she said the words, Zara realized how cold they sounded. "Maybe that's true in battle," Marcus replied, his hand still covering hers. "But you're not in battle now. Here, it's okay to grieve for your friends." Something inside Zara's chest tightened, and she felt an unfamiliar burning sensation behind her eyes. She had not cried since childhood. It was considered a weakness in Zephyrian military culture. But Marcus's gentle acceptance of her pain, his permission to feel the emotion she had been suppressing, broke something loose inside her. The tears came suddenly and without warning, deep, wrenching sobs that seemed to pull all the accumulated grief and trauma of the past days out of her body. Marcus moved closer, offering his presence without trying to stop her tears or offer empty platitudes. He simply sat with her, one hand on her shoulder, letting her experience her pain without judgment. When the storm finally passed, Zara felt strangely lighter. Empty but clean, as if something toxic had been purged from her system. "I apologize," she said, wiping her eyes with her sleeve. That was unprofessional. That was human, Marcus corrected gently. Grief is how we honor those we've lost. There's nothing unprofessional about missing your friends. Human, Zara repeated thoughtfully. You use that word as if it encompasses something specific. A way of being. Marcus smiled. In many ways, it does. Humans believe that our connections with others, our capacity for empathy, love, sacrifice, that's what makes us who we are. Not our technology or our achievements, but how we treat each other. They spent the morning talking as Zara's strength continued to return. Marcus showed her his research, explaining his work with the enthusiasm of someone truly passionate about his subject. He had discovered several unique mineral formations on the planet that could have significant industrial applications. But more importantly, he had been documenting the ecosystem and its delicate balance. Your people sent you here alone to do all this? Zara asked, impressed by the scope of his work. Humans often work alone on deep space missions. We've learned to be self-sufficient by necessity. But also, he paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. We believe that sometimes the best discoveries come when you have time to really observe, to become part of a place rather than just passing through. How long have you been studying this world? 2 months. I have another month scheduled before the supply ship returns to pick me up. The mention of Marcus's eventual departure created an unexpected pang in Zara's chest. The feeling surprised her with its intensity. She had known this human for less than 24 hours. Yet the thought of his leaving bothered her more than it should have. What about contacting your people? Marcus asked. We should try the long-range communicator again. They spent the afternoon attempting to reach Zephyrian Command through various frequencies and relay stations. The electromagnetic interference was still too strong for clear transmission, but they managed to send a brief automated distress signal that would repeat every few hours. Someone will eventually receive it, Zara said, though she found herself oddly reluctant about the prospect of rescue. As the day progressed, Marcus introduced her to other aspects of his daily routine. He showed her his exercise regimen, a combination of calisthenics and martial arts movements that were designed to maintain physical fitness in the shelter's limited space. Zara was surprised by his agility and strength. Humans might be considered primitive by galactic standards, but Marcus was clearly in excellent physical condition. Zephyrian combat training was purely practical, efficient, brutal, designed to eliminate enemies as quickly as possible. This human approach seemed to incorporate elements of art and self-reflection that were entirely foreign to her military background. In the evening, Marcus prepared another meal using his supplies and local ingredients. They ate by the warm glow of the shelter's lighting, talking about their respective worlds and cultures. Marcus described Earth's incredible diversity, not just of species and ecosystems, but of human cultures and perspectives. My planet has over 200 different countries, he explained, each with its own languages, customs, traditions. We spent most of our history fighting each other, but we've also learned from those differences. That sounds chaotic, Zara observed. It can be, but it also means we've developed many different ways of solving problems, many different perspectives on what life means. When humans finally reached the stars, we brought all of that diversity with us. The Zephyrian Empire is more unified. One culture, one set of laws, one military command structure. It creates efficiency. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. Efficiency has its value, but sometimes the best solutions come from unexpected places, from people who think differently than everyone else. As they talked, Zara found herself studying Marcus's face in the soft light. He had expressive features that revealed his emotions clearly, so different from Zephyrian social norms that emphasized emotional control and stoic presentation. When he smiled, his entire face transformed. When he was thinking deeply, he had a small crease between his eyebrows. When he talked about something he was passionate about, his eyes seemed to glow with inner light. "Why aren't you afraid of me?" Zara asked suddenly. Marcus looked surprised by the question. "Why would I be afraid of you? I'm a trained warrior from an alien species you've never encountered before. I could easily kill you with my bare hands, even injured as I am. Could you? Marcus asked, and there was genuine curiosity in his voice rather than challenge. Yes, but you won't. How can you be so certain? Marcus was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. Because you have honor. I can see it in how you carry yourself, in how you speak about your fallen comrades, in how you've treated me despite having every reason to be suspicious. You're not someone who would harm a person who helped you. His simple faith in her character was both humbling and warming. In Zara's world, trust was something earned through years of shared combat and mutual dependence. Yet this human had extended trust to her immediately, based on nothing more than his intuitive reading of her nature. You are either very wise or very naive, Marcus of Earth. Maybe both, he replied with a grin. Humans are often accused of being idealistic. We tend to see the best in people until proven otherwise. That night, Marcus insisted that Zara take his bed while he slept on a portable cot. Despite her protests that she could manage with the examination table, he was adamant about ensuring her comfort. As she lay in the darkness, listening to his quiet breathing across the room, Zara found herself thinking about the stark contrast between their species. Zephyrians were taught to be strong, independent, emotionally controlled. They valued efficiency, hierarchy, and clear chains of command. Personal relationships were secondary to duty and military effectiveness. Yet here was Marcus, representing a species that seemed to prioritize compassion, empathy, and individual connection above all else. The strange part was how natural it felt to be around him. Despite their obvious differences, despite coming from completely different worlds and cultures, they had fallen into an easy companionship that felt both comfortable and significant. Marcus treated her not as an alien warrior to be feared or as a curiosity to be studied, but simply as a person who needed help. It was, Zara realized, the first time in years that anyone had seen her as something other than a soldier first. Marcus saw her as Zara, not Commander Zara, not the decorated warrior, not the survivor of 100 battles, but simply Zara, a person with thoughts and feelings and experiences worth understanding. The realization was both liberating and terrifying. It meant acknowledging parts of herself that she had buried under layers of military conditioning and professional obligation. It meant considering the possibility that there might be more to life than duty and warfare and the endless conflicts that dominated galactic civilization. As sleep finally claimed her, Zara's last conscious thought was of Marcus's smile and the gentle way he had touched her hand that morning. Such a simple gesture, yet it had conveyed more genuine care and connection than she had experienced in years of military camaraderie. Perhaps, she thought drowsily, there was something to be said for the human way of seeing the world. Perhaps strength didn't always have to come from emotional distance and professional detachment. Perhaps sometimes the greatest courage lay in opening oneself to connection with another being, regardless of the risks involved. The night passed peacefully, with both beings sleeping more soundly than either had in many days. Outside the shelter, the twin suns set behind the mountains while alien constellations wheeled overhead, bearing witness to the beginning of something neither human nor Zephyrian had expected when this day began. The third day began with Marcus finding Zara already awake, standing near the shelter's main viewport, and gazing out at the sunrise. Her posture was straighter than it had been since he found her, and the color had returned to her violet-hued skin. The healing process was progressing remarkably well, though Marcus suspected that Zephyrian physiology was naturally more resilient than human. "How are you feeling this morning?" he asked, approaching with 2 cups of the herbal tea he had been brewing from local plants. "Strong enough to begin planning," Zara replied, accepting the cup with a grateful nod. "My people will be searching for survivors by now. They'll have identified the wreckage and begun recovery operations." Marcus detected something in her tone that suggested mixed feelings about potential rescue. "That's good news." Zara turned to face him, her emerald eyes searching his expression. "Is it? You seem thoughtful this morning." Marcus was quiet for a moment, sipping his tea while he gathered his thoughts. Over the past 2 days, he had found himself growing increasingly attached to this remarkable woman who had literally fallen into his solitary existence. The prospect of her leaving created an unexpected ache in his chest. "I was thinking about what happens after your rescue," he admitted. "This planet will seem very quiet after you're gone." Something in Zara's expression softened. "You have become accustomed to having company." "More than accustomed. I've enjoyed our conversations, our time together. You've made me see this place and my work here in new ways." Their eyes met across the small space, and both beings felt the weight of unspoken feelings passing between them. The connection that had begun forming over the past days had grown deeper and more complex than either had anticipated. What had started as a simple rescue had evolved into something neither could easily define or dismiss. "Perhaps," Zara said carefully, "we could arrange for your research mission to be extended. My people often establish monitoring stations on strategically significant worlds. Your geological findings could be valuable for such purposes." Marcus felt his heart rate increase at the suggestion. "Are you saying you might be able to stay?" "I'm saying that diplomatic relationships between our peoples could benefit from cultural exchange. A joint research mission could serve multiple purposes." They were dancing around the obvious truth that neither wanted to say goodbye, that something significant was developing between them that transcended their respective origins. But both were also aware of the complexities such a relationship would involve. Their conversation was interrupted by a sharp beeping from the communication station. Marcus hurried to check the readings while Zara moved to look over his shoulder, her proximity making him acutely aware of her presence. "It's a response to your distress signal," Marcus reported. "Zephyrian military frequencies. They're requesting confirmation of survivor status and coordinates." Zara stared at the blinking display for a long moment before reaching past Marcus to activate the response transmitter. Her arm brushed against his as she worked, and both of them felt the brief contact more intensely than such a simple touch should have warranted. "This is Commander Zara Veltar, ID designation 77 Alpha 9, she spoke into the transmitter. "Confirming survivor status. Requesting medical evacuation and tactical debrief. Sending coordinates now." The response came within minutes. "Commander Veltar, this is Admiral Corvex aboard the battle cruiser Sovereign's Edge. Confirm receipt of coordinates. Rescue shuttle deploying immediately. Estimated arrival in 6 hours. Prepare for immediate evacuation." 6 hours. Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach at the finality of that timeline. In 6 hours, Zara would be gone, return to her military duties, and the ongoing conflicts that defined her existence. The brief interlude they had shared on this remote world would become nothing more than a memory. 6 hours, Zara repeated quietly, her own voice carrying a note of reluctance. "We should prepare," Marcus said, forcing himself to sound practical. "Make sure you have everything you need for the journey back." But neither of them moved toward any kind of preparation. Instead, they stood beside the communication console, both acutely aware that their time together was now measured in hours rather than the indefinite future they had been unconsciously assuming. "Marcus," Zara began, then stopped, seemingly unsure how to continue. "I know," he said softly. "I feel it too." The admission hung between them, both acknowledging and complicating the emotional connection that had developed. In any other circumstances, with any other beings, it might have led to a simple expression of mutual attraction. But they were from different species, different worlds, different ways of life. The obstacles to any kind of relationship were seemingly insurmountable. "Tell me about love," Zara said suddenly. "How do humans understand it?" Marcus was startled by the directness of the question. "Love? That's complicated to explain." "Try, please." Marcus walked to the viewport, gazing out at the landscape where he had first found her. "Humans believe that love is the strongest force in the universe. Stronger than gravity, stronger than the nuclear forces that power stars. It's what makes us willing to sacrifice everything for another person's happiness, even when that person is different from you. When they come from another world, another way of life. Especially then, Marcus replied, turning back to face her. Some of the greatest love stories in human history have been between people from different cultures, different backgrounds. Love doesn't recognize borders or boundaries. It sees the soul of another person and recognizes something that resonates with your own soul. Zara moved to stand beside him at the viewport. Zephyrians understand duty, honor, loyalty to comrades. But romantic love, it's not encouraged in our military culture. It's seen as a distraction, a weakness that can compromise judgment. What do you think? Marcus asked. Do you think it's a weakness? Zara was quiet for a long time, watching the alien landscape outside. 3 days ago, I would have said yes without hesitation. But now, she turned to look at him directly. Now I think perhaps my people have been wrong about many things. The intensity of her gaze made Marcus's breath catch. In her green eyes, he could see a vulnerability that she probably showed to no one else, a willingness to question everything she had been taught about life, and relationships, and what truly mattered. Zara, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. She stepped closer, close enough that he could feel the warmth radiating from her body. In 6 hours, I will return to my ship and resume my duties. But right now, in this moment, I want to understand what... Now we have 5 hours and 40 minutes to explore this feeling, to understand each other as completely as possible before the universe separates us. They spent the next hours in a kind of suspended reality, talking and touching and learning each other with the intensity of people who know their time is limited. Marcus told her about his dreams of exploring distant worlds, of making discoveries that would expand human understanding of the galaxy. Zara spoke about her childhood memories from before the military academy, about the person she had been before warfare defined her existence. They made love with a tenderness and passion that surprised both of them. Despite their physical differences, their bodies seemed to understand each other instinctively. More importantly, their souls connected in a way that transcended species or biology. In Marcus's arms, Zara felt more herself than she had in years. In Zara's embrace, Marcus found a sense of completion he had never known he was seeking. Afterward, as they lay together in the narrow bed, Zara traced patterns on Marcus's chest with her fingertips. I have a confession to make, she said quietly. What's that? I've been monitoring the communication channels for the past hour. My rescue has been delayed due to electromagnetic interference. We have at least another day together, possibly 2. Marcus raised an eyebrow. You knew this and didn't tell me? I wanted to see if you would still be here with me, still be present in this moment, even when you believed our time was ending. I needed to know if what I was feeling was real or just the intensity of impending separation. And what did you conclude? Zara lifted her head to look at him directly. I concluded that I am falling in love with you, Marcus Chin of Earth, completely, irrevocably, and with full knowledge of how complicated this makes both of our lives. Marcus felt his heart swell with joy and terror in equal measure. I love you too, Zara Veltar of the Zephyrian Empire. I have since the moment you trusted me enough to let me help you. They talked through the night about the future, about possibilities and obstacles. Could they find a way to be together despite their different worlds? Could love survive the political and cultural barriers that separated their species? There were no easy answers, but they agreed to try. I could request reassignment to diplomatic duties, Zara suggested. The Empire is always looking for officers with field experience to handle first contact situations. And I could apply for extended research missions in Zephyrian space. My geological expertise could be valuable for colonial development projects. They were grasping at possibilities, both of them knowing that the reality of making such arrangements would be far more complex than they were admitting. But the hope itself was precious, the belief that their connection was strong enough to overcome any obstacle. As the twin suns rose on their 4th day together, Marcus and Zara held each other close and made promises that neither was certain they could keep, but both were determined to try. Love, they had discovered, was indeed the strongest force in the universe. Whether it would be strong enough to bridge the gap between their worlds remained to be seen. The communication console remained quiet, giving them borrowed time to explore this new reality they had created together. Outside, the planet continued its ancient rotation, indifferent to the profound changes taking place within the small human shelter. But for two beings from different worlds, everything had changed, and there would be no going back to the people they had been before love had found them in the vast emptiness of space. The distinctive whine of military atmospheric engines shattered the peaceful morning of their 5th day together. Marcus and Zara both bolted upright from their shared bed, the sound triggering immediate tactical awareness in both of them despite their different training backgrounds. "That's a Zephyrian military transport," Zara said, her voice carrying both relief and regret as she moved quickly to the viewport. 3 ships, a rescue shuttle, and 2 escort fighters. Marcus joined her at the window, his arm automatically going around her waist in a gesture that had become natural over their days together. The approaching vessels were sleek and aggressive-looking, their dark metal hulls bristling with weapon systems. They represented everything that would separate him from Zara: duty, military protocol, and the vast cultural gulf between their peoples. "They're early," he observed. "Admiral Corvex is thorough. He probably pushed through the electromagnetic interference, using the fleet's more powerful communication arrays." Zara leaned into Marcus's embrace for a moment, drawing strength from his presence. "I should prepare my gear." But neither of them moved. They stood together watching the ships descend, both knowing that once those landing ramps lowered, the spell of their shared isolation would be broken forever. The lead transport touched down approximately 200 meters from Marcus's shelter, its engines kicking up clouds of dust and debris. The escort fighters remained airborne, circling in patrol patterns that suggested the Zephyrian military was taking no chances with potential threats. "Commander Veltar," an amplified voice called across the distance. "This is Colonel Thane. Please exit the structure and identify yourself for immediate extraction." Zara sighed and moved to collect her armor pieces. "I have to go out there. Military protocol demands it." "What should I do?" Marcus asked, helping her secure the armor plating that had protected her during their first meeting. "Stay inside for now. Let me handle the initial contact. Zephyrian military can be suspicious of unknown variables." Marcus nodded, understanding the implicit warning. To the soldiers now deploying from the transport, he would be seen as a potential threat, an alien being who had been alone with their missing commander for 5 days. The fact that he had saved her life might not matter if they perceive his presence as compromising to military security. Zara paused at the shelter's exit, turning back to look at him one final time. The expression on her face was a mixture of love, determination, and fear, not for her own safety, but for what the next few hours might mean for their future together. "Whatever happens," she said softly, "know that these have been the best days of my life." "Mine too," Marcus replied. "I love you, Zara. And I love you." She smiled, and for a moment the worried commander disappeared, replaced by the woman who had discovered passion and tenderness in his arms. "Trust me to handle this. Trust that our love is strong enough." With that, she activated the shelter's exit protocol and stepped outside into the harsh light of the twin suns. Marcus watched through the viewport as Zara approached the landed transport. Even at a distance, he could see the rigid military bearing she had adopted, the way she held herself as a commanding officer reporting for duty rather than as the vulnerable woman who had shared his bed. The transformation was both impressive and heartbreaking, necessary for the situation, but a reminder of the worlds that separated them. A group of armored Zephyrian soldiers had formed a perimeter around the landing zone. They were larger than Zara, Marcus noticed, and their equipment was more advanced than her battle-worn gear. At their center stood a figure who was obviously the commanding officer, taller than the others, with decorative elements on his armor that suggested high rank. Marcus activated his shelter's external audio pickup, hoping to monitor the conversation without being detected. The voices came through clearly, translated automatically by his communication system. "Commander Veltar," the commanding officer said, his tone crisp and formal. "Colonel Thane, 2nd Fleet Intelligence Division. You've been missing for 5 days. Report your status." "Sir, I am in good health, having received medical treatment for battle injuries. I am prepared for immediate extraction and debriefing." Zara's voice was equally formal, showing no hint of the warmth Marcus had grown to love. "Medical treatment from whom?" "Our scans show a human settlement structure. Are there survivors from the research mission that was scheduled for this world?" Marcus felt a chill at the mention of Intelligence Division. These weren't just rescue personnel. They were military investigators, trained to be suspicious of any deviation from expected parameters. "There is one human researcher, sir. A geological survey specialist named Marcus Chun. He provided medical assistance when I was injured. A human." Colonel Thane's tone carried obvious distaste. "And you trusted this alien with classified information about your mission?" "I share no classified information, sir. The human provided medical assistance and shelter. Nothing more." Marcus could hear the careful control in Zara's voice, the way she was choosing her words to protect both of them while technically remaining truthful. But he could also sense the tension building in the conversation. 5 days alone with an unknown alien, another voice interjected. This one sounded younger, more aggressive. "That seems like a significant security breach, Commander." "Lieutenant Corval," Colonel Thane said warningly, but Marcus could hear agreement in his tone. "Sir, with respect, the human saved my life," Zara replied, and Marcus could detect the first hint of emotion breaking through her professional demeanor. "Without his medical intervention, I would have died from internal bleeding. He asked for nothing in return and made no attempt to gather intelligence. Nevertheless, this situation requires investigation. We need to interview this human and assess what information may have been compromised." Colonel Thane gestured to his soldiers. "Secure the structure and bring the alien out for questioning." "Sir, I don't think that's necessary," Zara began, but her protest was overruled. Marcus watched 4 heavily armed soldiers approach his shelter. Their weapons weren't drawn, but their body language was unmistakably threatening. He had perhaps 30 seconds before they breached his door. Taking a deep breath, Marcus made a decision that would either help their situation or make it infinitely worse. He activated the shelter's external communication system and spoke directly to the assembled Zephyrians. "Colonel Thane, this is Dr. Marcus Chun, representing the Terran Colonial Research Authority. I'm coming out voluntarily to avoid any misunderstanding." The soldiers stopped their advance as Marcus opened the shelter door and stepped outside, his hands visible and empty. He wore his best formal clothing rather than the simple work garments Zara had seen him in, hoping to project an image of professionalism rather than threat. Colonel Thane studied him with obvious suspicion. Up close, the Zephyrian officer was impressive, nearly 3 meters tall, with a violet skin and emerald eyes characteristic of his species, but with additional scarring that spoke of extensive combat experience. His armor was decorated with medals and insignia that suggested a distinguished military career. "Dr. Chun," the colonel said, his pronunciation of the name careful but accurate. "You will submit to questioning regarding your interactions with Commander Veltar." "Of course, Colonel. Though I should mention that my presence here is officially sanctioned by the Terran government. I have all appropriate documentation for this research mission." Marcus produced his credentials from his jacket, hoping that bureaucratic legitimacy might soften the military suspicion. Colonel Thane accepted the documents and passed them to a subordinate for scanning and verification. "Your credentials appear authentic," the colonel admitted after a few minutes. "However, the nature of your interaction with our officer still requires investigation." "I understand your concerns," Marcus replied, keeping his voice calm and professional. "Commander Veltar was severely injured when I found her 3 days after the battle. I provided medical assistance and shelter until rescue could arrive. She conducted herself with complete professionalism throughout our interaction. 3 days after the battle, Lieutenant Corval interjected. Yet you claim she was only here for 5 days total. That's 2 additional days that aren't accounted for in your statement. Marcus felt his heart rate spike. The lieutenant had caught the discrepancy in timing, and now all eyes were on him for an explanation. One wrong word could expose the intimate relationship he and Zara had developed. The initial medical treatment was extensive, Marcus replied carefully. Commander Veltar required several days of recovery before she was strong enough to attempt communication with your forces. I felt it was more important to ensure her complete recovery than to rush potentially dangerous procedures. Colonel Thane studied both Marcus and Zara with the calculating gaze of a professional intelligence officer. Interesting. Commander, did you feel your treatment was appropriate for your injuries? Yes, sir. Dr. Chen's medical intervention was both competent and necessary. And during your recovery period, did Dr. Chen attempt to gather any information about Zephyrian military capabilities, tactics, or strategic positions? No, sir. Our conversations were limited to medical concerns and general cultural exchange. Marcus admired Zara's skill at navigating the interrogation. She was telling the truth while carefully omitting the personal details that would complicate the situation. But he could see the strain in her posture, the effort it was taking to maintain emotional distance while protecting their secret. Cultural exchange, Colonel Thane repeated. Elaborate. Dr. Chun shared information about human scientific methods and his research on this planet. I provided general information about Zephyrian exploration protocols, nothing classified or militarily sensitive. The questioning continued for nearly an hour, with both Marcus and Zara maintaining their careful balance of honesty and discretion. Marcus found himself impressed by Zara's skill at military protocol. She managed to protect their relationship while technically violating no regulations. Finally, Colonel Thane seemed satisfied that no security breach had occurred. Very well. Dr. Chun, you will be transported to the nearest Terran diplomatic facility for formal debriefing. Commander Veltar, you will return with us for medical evaluation and mission debrief. The finality of the separation hit both Marcus and Zara simultaneously. They would be taken in different directions, processed through different bureaucracies, returned to their separate worlds with no guarantee of ever seeing each other again. Colonel, Marcus said quickly, I would like to formally recommend Commander Veltar for recognition by the Terran government. Her conduct during this situation was exemplary, and her survival is a testament to the strength and courage of the Zephyrian military. Colonel Thane looked surprised by the suggestion. That's unusual, but I suppose diplomatic recognition could be arranged. Additionally, Marcus continued, hoping he wasn't overplaying his hand, I believe this incident demonstrates the value of continued cooperation between our peoples. Perhaps joint research missions could be beneficial to both species. Now Zara was looking at him with barely concealed admiration. He was using the diplomatic opening she had suggested during their private conversations, trying to create an official framework that might allow them to meet again. Joint missions, Colonel Thane mused. The Strategic Command has been discussing expanded exploration protocols. Dr. Chun, would you be interested in consulting on future Zephyrian research operations? I would be honored, Colonel. And I believe Commander Veltar's experience with human cooperation protocols would make her an ideal liaison for such programs. The suggestion hung in the air, both Marcus and Zura trying not to appear too eager, while Colonel Thane considered the political implications. I will forward your recommendations to the appropriate authorities, the colonel said finally. For now, however, we must proceed with standard extraction protocols. As the soldiers prepared for departure, Marcus and Zara found themselves with a few precious moments alone as equipment was loaded onto the transport. You're brilliant, Zara whispered, moving close enough that their conversation wouldn't be overheard. The diplomatic angle might actually work. It has to work, Marcus replied, his voice intense with emotion. I can't lose you, Zara. Not when we've just found each other. You won't lose me. Whatever it takes, whatever obstacles we face, I will find a way back to you. Promise me. I promise. On my honor as a Zephyrian warrior and my love for you as a woman, I will find a way. The moment was interrupted by Lieutenant Corval calling for final boarding. Marcus and Zara stepped apart, resuming their professional demeanors as the galaxy's political realities reasserted themselves. But as they were led to separate transports, both carried with them the memory of 5 perfect days and the hope that love might indeed prove stronger than the forces trying to separate them. The next phase of their relationship would be played out on a much larger stage, with diplomats and military commands and interstellar politics all weighing in on their future. The game had become infinitely more complex, but neither Marcus nor Zara was ready to concede defeat. Their love story was far from over. It was simply evolving into something larger than either of them had ever imagined possible. 6 months later, Marcus stood before the massive viewing ports of the Terra Nova diplomatic station, watching the sleek lines of a Zephyrian battle cruiser approach through the star field. His heart hammered against his ribs as the ship grew larger, its dark hull reflecting the light of the system's primary star. Somewhere aboard that vessel was Zura, returning from what had become the most complex diplomatic negotiation of the century. The months since their separation had been a whirlwind of debriefings, committee meetings, and political maneuvering that had tested both of their patience and resolve. Marcus had thrown himself into his work, producing detailed geological surveys and resource assessments that had impressed even the most skeptical members of the Terran Colonial Authority. His recommendations for joint exploration missions had gained traction among human leadership who were always eager to expand their influence in the galaxy. Meanwhile, Zara had fought her own battles within the Zephyrian military hierarchy. Her survival and subsequent rescue had initially been celebrated, but questions about her extended contact with a human researcher had created complications for her career. Only her impeccable military record and the strategic value of the intelligence she had gathered about human capabilities had protected her from more serious consequences. The turning point had come when both governments realized the unique opportunity presented by their situation. Here were 2 individuals who had extensive first-hand experience with cross-species cooperation, who could serve as living examples of successful human-Zephyrian relations. The diplomatic corps on both sides had seized upon Marcus and Zara as symbols of interstellar friendship and cooperation. What neither government fully understood was that the cooperation between Marcus and Zara had evolved far beyond professional collaboration. Through carefully encrypted communications and official diplomatic channels, they had maintained contact throughout the months of separation. Their messages had been necessarily formal and circumspect, but both had become expert at reading between the lines of bureaucratic language to find the personal warmth and affection that sustained them through the long separation. Marcus checked his chronometer for the 100th time that day. The formal reception wouldn't begin for another 2 hours, but he had been too restless to remain in his quarters. The past 6 months had felt like a lifetime, and the prospect of seeing Zara again had consumed his thoughts for weeks. Dr. Chun, a voice behind him called. Marcus turned to see Ambassador Patricia Wells approaching, her expression carrying the carefully neutral professionalism that characterized all high-level diplomatic interactions. Ambassador Wells had been his primary liaison throughout the negotiations, and while she had been supportive of the joint mission proposals, Marcus suspected she was also keeping a careful eye on his behavior. Ambassador, Marcus replied with a polite nod. Is everything prepared for the reception? As ready as we can make it. The Zephyrian delegation is quite substantial. Not just military officers, but scientists, cultural attaches, and trade representatives. This isn't just about your research proposals anymore, Dr. Chun. This has become a cornerstone event for human-Zephyrian relations. The weight of that responsibility wasn't lost on Marcus. What had begun as a desperate attempt to see Zara again had evolved into something that could reshape the political landscape of the outer galaxy. Both species stood to gain enormously from closer cooperation, but the cultural barriers were substantial. How much do you know about my time on Kepler 442b? Marcus asked carefully. Ambassador Wells gave him a knowing look. I know that you and Commander Veltar developed a working relationship that has proven valuable for both our peoples. I also know that the success of this diplomatic initiative depends partly on your ability to serve as effective cultural ambassadors. The diplomatic non-answer told Marcus everything he needed to know. The human government suspected the true nature of his relationship with Zara, but as long as it served their political interests, they were willing to overlook the personal complications. And if our relationship extends beyond professional cooperation, then I trust you both to handle your personal affairs with the discretion appropriate to your positions, Ambassador Wells replied. The galaxy is watching, Dr. Chun. What happens here could set precedents that affect human-alien relations for generations. The conversation was interrupted by the announcement that the Zephyrian vessel had completed docking procedures. Marcus felt his pulse quicken as he realized that Zara was now less than a kilometer away, separated from him only by the corridors and security protocols of the diplomatic station. The formal reception was held in the station's grandest conference hall, with representatives from both species arranged in carefully planned seating configurations designed to encourage interaction while respecting cultural sensitivities. Marcus found himself positioned near the front of the human delegation, close enough to the speaker's podium to observe every detail of the proceedings. When the Zephyrian delegation entered, Marcus had to consciously control his breathing. They were impressive as a group, tall, elegant beings whose violet skin and emerald eyes gave them an almost ethereal appearance under the station's lighting. Their formal diplomatic attire was a striking combination of military precision and artistic beauty, with flowing fabrics and decorative elements that spoke to their culture's appreciation for both function and aesthetics. And then he saw her. Zara entered near the center of the group, her posture reflecting the perfect balance of military bearing and diplomatic grace. She wore formal Zephyrian dress rather than military armor, deep purple robes that complemented her skin tone, with silver accents that caught the light as she moved. Her hair was arranged in an elaborate style that Marcus had never seen before, suggesting the formal nature of the occasion. But it was her eyes that captured his attention completely. When their gazes met across the crowded hall, Marcus felt the same electric connection that had sustained them through months of separation. Despite the formal setting and the hundreds of observers, for just a moment they were the only two beings in the room. Zara's expression remained diplomatically neutral, but Marcus could see the warmth and recognition in her eyes. She was as beautiful as he remembered, but there was something more, a confidence and poise that suggested the months of diplomatic training had refined her already considerable personal presence. The formal presentations proceeded according to protocol, with speeches from high-ranking officials on both sides emphasizing the mutual benefits of increased cooperation. Marcus delivered his prepared remarks about the geological resources available in jointly explored territories, but his attention was primarily focused on Zara, who sat with the other Zephyrian military advisors. When Commander Veltar was introduced to present the Zephyrian military perspective on joint operations, Marcus felt a surge of pride at the respectful attention she commanded from both delegations. Her speech was masterful, balancing military pragmatism with diplomatic optimism, while subtly advocating for the expanded cooperation programs that would allow them to work together. The success of Dr. Chen's mission on Kepler 442b demonstrates the potential for productive collaboration between our species, Zara said, her eyes briefly meeting Marcus's as she spoke. Human resourcefulness and adaptability complement Zephyrian strategic planning and technological capabilities. Together, we can achieve exploration goals that neither species could accomplish alone. The formal reception lasted for hours, with countless introductions, cultural exchanges, and preliminary discussions about specific cooperation agreements. Throughout it all, Marcus and Zara maintained the professional distance required by the circumstances, but both were acutely aware of the other's presence. Finally, as the official proceedings wound down and delegates began forming smaller conversation groups, Marcus found an opportunity to approach the Zephyrian section. His heart raced as he made his way through the crowd, knowing that this would be their first direct conversation since the separation 6 months ago. "Commander Veltar," he said formally as he approached, conscious that dozens of people were watching their interaction. "Congratulations on your presentation. Your perspective on joint operations was very insightful." "Thank you, Dr. Chun. Your geological assessments have been equally valuable for our strategic planning." Zara's voice was perfectly professional, but Marcus could detect the underlying warmth that was meant for him alone. They stood facing each other in the crowded hall, separated by protocol and political necessity, but connected by something far stronger than the formal roles they were playing. Other delegates continued their conversations around them, but Marcus felt as though he and Zara existed in a bubble of shared understanding. "I believe there are several specific proposals that would benefit from detailed technical discussion," Marcus said, hoping his suggestion would be interpreted as the professional consultation it appeared to be. "Agreed. Perhaps we could arrange a working session to review the geological data in detail." It was Ambassador Wells who provided the opening they needed. "An excellent suggestion. Dr. Chun, why don't you escort Commander Veltar to Conference Room 7? You can begin the technical review while we continue the general discussions here." Conference Room 7 was smaller and more private than the main hall, with secure communications and a comprehensive database access for serious working sessions. More importantly, it offered the first opportunity for Marcus and Zara to be alone together since their separation. The moment the door closed behind them, the careful diplomatic facade both had been maintaining dissolved completely. Without a word, they moved into each other's arms, holding tightly as months of separation and careful restraint finally gave way to honest emotion. "I missed you so much," Zara whispered against his shoulder, her voice thick with feeling. "Every day, every hour. The diplomatic training, the meetings, the negotiations, all I could think about was getting back to you." "I know. Me too." Marcus pulled back slightly to look at her face, drinking in the details he had memorized but missed so desperately. "You're even more beautiful than I remembered." They kissed with the passion of long-separated lovers, pouring months of longing and hope into the contact. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing heavily. "How long do we have?" Zara asked. "Maybe an hour before someone expects a preliminary report from our technical consultation," Marcus replied with a smile. They spent the precious time catching up on everything the formal communications hadn't been able to convey. Zara described her battles within the Zephyrian military hierarchy, the way she had fought for the cooperation programs while carefully avoiding any mention of personal motivations. Marcus told her about his expanded research proposals and the way human leadership had embraced the idea of closer ties with the Zephyrian Empire. "The preliminary agreements are more comprehensive than I had dared hope," Zara said. "Joint research stations, cultural exchange programs, coordinated exploration missions. If everything goes according to plan, we could be working together within a year." "Working together officially," Marcus said, taking her hands in his. "But what about us personally? What about the future we talked about during those 5 days?" Zara's expression grew serious. "That's more complicated. Both of our governments are invested in us as symbols of successful cooperation, but they're also watching carefully to make sure we don't become a diplomatic liability." "Are you saying we have to keep hiding our relationship?" "I'm saying we have to be smart about it. Build our professional partnership first. Prove that our personal feelings enhance rather than compromise our work. If we can demonstrate that our love makes us more effective rather than less, eventually we can be open about it." Marcus nodded, understanding the political realities even as he chafed against them. "So we continue as we have been, official cooperation with private affection. For now." "But Marcus," Zara's eyes blazed with the intensity he remembered from their intimate moments on Kepler 442b. "I meant what I said before. I will find a way for us to be together. Whatever it takes, however long it takes, I will not give up on what we have." "Neither will I. We've already overcome impossible odds just to get this far." Their conversation was interrupted by a gentle chime indicating an incoming communication. Ambassador Wells's voice filled the room. "Dr. Chun, Commander Veltar, how is your technical review progressing? Very productively, Ambassador, Marcus replied after activating the response system. We're identifying several areas where immediate cooperation would be beneficial. Excellent. Please prepare a brief summary for the closing session in 20 minutes. 20 minutes to create a professional document that would hide their personal reunion while advancing the cooperation programs that represented their only hope for a shared future. It was a challenge that perfectly encapsulated their situation, working within the system to achieve goals the system wasn't designed to support. But as they worked together to draft the technical summary, Marcus and Zara fell into the easy collaboration that had characterized their best moments on the alien world where they had first found each other. Their minds worked in perfect harmony, complementing each other's strengths while compensating for weaknesses. The document they produced was a masterpiece of diplomatic. Now, it would have the chance to grow and flourish in the open, disguised as diplomatic cooperation, but no less real for the camouflage. The formal agreement signed that day would indeed reshape human-Zephyrian relations for generations. But for Marcus and Zura, the most important achievement was simpler and more personal. They had proven that love could transcend any boundary the universe might place between two souls determined to find each other. As the Zephyrian delegation prepared to depart for their next diplomatic mission, Marcus stood again at the viewing ports, watching their ship begin its journey back to the stars. But this time, he wasn't watching Zara leave. This time, he was watching her begin the next phase of journey they would complete together, building a future where love could flourish openly among the stars, serving as proof that the greatest discoveries weren't found in distant worlds, but in the connections between beings brave enough to reach across the void for each other.